Hello and welcome everybody. And we are so excited today to have Doa Öztürk with us. Doa received a PhD in space physics and a PhD in scientific computing from the University of Michigan. Her thesis focused on understanding solar wind dynamic pressure control of the coupled magnetosphere-ionosphere-thermosphere systems using my favorite word, magnetohydrodynamic modeling. On graduation, she joined NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, as a postdoctoral scholar, and developed the High Latitude Input for Meso-scale Electrodynamics Framework, a code library that enables incorporating measurements of electric fields as boundary conditions to the general circulation models. You'll have to explain to me what that means. In 2020, she joined the Geophysical Institute at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and has been working as a research assistant professor since. And she is going to be here today talking to us about some of the educational materials that she has been creating. So you can take it away, Doa, and you can share your screen if you like to.
Thank you, Laura. Let me see. Is it displaying correctly?
It is indeed. I love that background.
Thank you. I made it using my PowerPoint techniques. Yes, thank you for having me, Laura. I wanted to talk to you about the insights I learned, I gained from teaching a Northern Lights class here at Fairbanks last year for K2 to K5. So I want to start with a kind of brief outline of what I'm going to talk about. And I have a mouse that has a mind of its own, so it can go back and forth a little bit. Sorry for that. But before starting, I want to kind of explain or provide you how is the education outlook of Alaska looks like, and talk about this Smart 365 project of the University of Alaska that aims to bring educational aspects that we have, or some of the research projects that we have here at Geophysical Institute and other research facilities to homeschool students. And then I will finish with some of the lessons I learned and some of takeaways for me on teaching this class in the next semester. So here is a how each state compares for or ranks in education for K-12 education. And you can see Alaska is having this really dark blue shade. It ranks 45th among all the US states for K-12 education. So it's not doing very well, but average spending per pupil at Alaska is about $1,700,000. So it's the 5th highest in the US. Even though there's a lot of spending, the ranking is still a little bit on the lower end than we would like to see. One other aspect that is important to us is the minority enrollment in the public schools, which is about 53%. So overall in Alaska, it's about 96% of the K-12 population is being educated in the public schools. But this is a very, when we look at the minority enrollment, we see that most of them, or about 47%, does not opt for public education. This brings about why homeschools are really popular in Alaska, especially during COVID-19. We have seen an increased enrollment, or homeschooling being increased about 17.9%, which is really high compared to other states. So given that the parental involvement in Alaska is 49th in ranking and homeschooling requirements are a bit low, this is a bit concerning for us because even though some of these homeschool networks are really, really advanced, having a low parental involvement rate, not having it 49th in ranking, really requires some more requirements in checks and balances in place to make sure that all the students are being educated to the national standards. Some other reasons for Alaskans choosing homeschools is because there are very isolated communities. There was a compulsory attendance law that was passed in 1929 in Alaska, but many regions still do not have access to schools close by. So it requires parents to either move their families to regions that are close to schools if they're really in isolated areas, or send their kids to schools, which further adds financial burdens on families. Another one is that the indigenous population. So there are this very harmful Eurocentric ways of learning presented as norm in the schools that creates unrealistic success measures for some of the indigenous students that we have. And the legacy of boarding schools with kids young as 5 being separated from their parents and almost assimilated in certain schools creates some distrust in this population. And again, prevalence of racism, microaggressions, and stereotype negatively impact their learning and creates not a very conducive environment for their learning. And then the other last reason for homeschooling is that the limited term employment in Alaska. So we have a lot of military families in Alaska. Also we have like seasonal employment opportunities where a lot of families do not wish to relocate for, which creates again or provides more a viable solution in homeschooling for these type of family environments. That is why UAF has the summer session and lifelong learning programs, and especially the 365 Smart Academy to remedy in anywhere we can some of these issues that come about with homeschooling. So SMART stands for Science, Math, Art, Recreation, and Technology, and it is really a wide range of different classes, like from aerial silks to, you know, babysitter training, creating comics, photography, you know, all the things you can think of. And Northern Lights class that I offered was part of this nice diverse selection. It offers virtual and in-person enrichment courses to aid with the curriculum and works in collaboration with homeschool networks to provide the best opportunities for students and best kind of facilities to help teach some of these courses. So as a part of this UAF summer sessions and lifelong learning, I offered this Northern Lights class. Overall, I had 4 students registered, even though I opened the class for K2 to K5. More students from, as you can see, K2 has also joined. So here you can see I had a bit of an ambitious syllabus, but we were able to get through it. And the demographics were 3 female presenting, 1 male presenting student. And their family backgrounds was 1 military family who was immediately moving after the course and 1 educator family. So in this Northern Lights class, I tried to cover, I had 4 weeks, so I had a bit of an ambitious plan, because whenever we talk about Aurora in an educational or outreach manner, we always have the picture, there's a coronal mass ejection, solar flare coming to Earth, and then there are a lot of energetic particles that bombard our upper atmosphere. But we know that this is not the only way that Aurora could occur. So I want to kind of demystify the process and not rely on heavy hitters like coronal mass ejections, but try to explain some of these in a physical context that would make sense to them, and why, you know, like we don't always have to have a hurricane for rain to occur. So try to hammer this idea through this class. So each week was designed to focus on 1 concept of heliophysics. Week 1 started with sun and the light. Week 2 was solar activity and magnetism. 3rd week covered magnetosphere and electromagnetism. And the 4th week focused on upper atmosphere and aurora. So bringing everything together. The first week, we started the course with a little bit discussion, getting to know each other. Like I asked whether they have seen Aurora, you know, what color and shape. So overall general discussion, whether they knew any other names for Northern Lights, and discuss sun as a star, what powered it, and what layers it had, the core, the chromosphere, photosphere, corona, and we learned about the light spectrum. In this class, we had a few activities like the sun that we see, what color is the sun, and what colors are in the sunlight, and then the sun that is. To do that, here I will just jump to the activities from the first week. So here you can see that in the first activity, we just draw the sun as they know. So it was a composite yellow, you know, or orangish hues, but nothing really structured. And we have taken this activity from NASA Make Sun paper. So as you can see, you need some shaving cream for it, some food coloring, and with a toothpick, you can draw certain, like mix the colors, and you can paste this to a drawing paper and then scrape it with the help of some cartoon box, and you can have like some of these like nice, really intricate features. So this activity, the sun that we see and sun that is, helps them understand that there are more dynamic processes on the surface of the sun that we are really not able to see with our naked eye. And here you can see the comparison, like the first pictures they made on they hated black paper for some reason, but they loved the drawing on the smartphone. So the activity that drawing on black paper didn't really work out, but you can see that they draw the sun and then made the sun activity with this shaving cream. Next thing we did was what color was the sun during the first week. So I bought one of these easy, like simple spectrographs. As you can see here, it's maybe not even called a spectrograph because of how it works. But what we did is first an experiment on a clear plastic container, filled it with water and mixed it with milk, and we hold a white light through it. So they have seen that the light looked different from each angle. So it was more, had a yellowish or bluish hues based on your viewing angle. So even though the light was white, they understand how it was breaking and creating different colors. Then I had a white light and different purple and blue lights, red and blue lights. So what they did is they looked at these lights with spectrograph, and they have noticed that, for example, purple was a combination of blue and red that appeared higher in this intensity. And when they looked at the white light, they were able to see all the colors were amplified. So this helped them understand a color is made out of, or sunlight is made out of different color ranges. So at the end, we have went over some of the objectives. That sun was made out of very hot gas called plasma. It has light that is made out of all the colors. It rotated around itself, and it had a magnetic field, and this is what created solar activity. In the second class, we focused on solar activity and magnetism, and we started the course with questions like, what does weather forecasting do? What do we look for in a weather forecast? What do you check? What do you want to know? And then we discussed sun's magnetic field, its dynamo, sunspots, solar cycle, active regions, solar flares, and coronal mass ejections, and how the solar wind occurs. So this helped them learn a little bit more about magnetism, magnetic field lines, the dipoles, and reconnection. So our class activities include how to make sunspots using iron shavings, plastic cup, and magnets. We painted the solar cycle. We looked at solar minimum, solar maximum, understand the differences between them. We made active regions, again, like similar to sunspots. We made flux ropes with these putties, and we stretched them, twisted them, and understand how ideally magnetic field lines would work, and how to be a space weather forecaster. What do we look out for that are originating from the sun? So here you can see some of this activity. How do we make the sunspots? This iron shaving and the magnet experiment has been done a lot, but what I did specifically was buying black, round that looked like sunspot magnets that look like actually sunspots, and putting them inside the plastic cup and doing the iron shavings outside of it gave them the 3D understanding of how the sun's magnetic field line looked like. And they were able to understand that these magnetic field lines were protruding from the surface. So that was a really nice intuition they built looking at this kind of setup. And we added more sunspots and made active regions and see how they even interacted with each other through this experiment. And you can see how well they understood, because this on the front you are seeing how we painted the solar cycle like a solar minimum, solar maximum, and they have also named it like solar rising or solar met. They give the middle of the cycle names that they would like to. And you can see they no longer draw the sun in composite one color anymore. They try to mix and match colors from the first class, what they have learned, that dynamic structures with the shaving foam that we have superposed. So that was nice to see. And these are some of the lecture notes they took. This is not something, an activity we come up with, but you can see how they draw different magnets and here as well. And then how that sunspots and the magnets would look like. So this is a really shows that their understanding of the material is really advanced, and they are able to take notes and how sunspots would create those magnetic field lines, very analogous to a compass would do. And this last activity was to also incorporate elements of mathematics, or velocity and time and speed and how they are related. Here we have looked at and used these units. Again, this activity was adapted from NASA SunMath. Whenever I adapted an activity, I try to include the full name. So here you can see, like, between two coronagraph images, there were 2 hours, so they were able to kind of count these as units and make out what the speed was like for the CME's expansion. And we said, if okay, if Earth was 10 unit distance away, when would it reach Earth? And they were all able to do this simple math question. So they, at the end of the class, they were really well aware that the sunspots are signs of solar activity. It had an 11-year cycle. They could get tangled and it could create flares. And through something called magnetic reconnection, we can launch these coronal mass ejections. So they were able to distinguish between flare and coronal mass ejection, and also the difference of solar wind, which was a constant wind blowing from the sun. In week 3, we had magnetosphere and electromagnetism. Again, we talked about what creates space weather. And this class, we started talking about when does it arrive, what happens when the space weather changes, what makes it a bad weather type of understanding. So we discussed Earth's magnetic field line, its magnetosphere shape, solar wind properties, how to determine Earth's magnetosphere shape. Again, how does magnetic reconnection happen at the Earth's magnetosphere or its vicinity? And we learned about, how to measure it, how the current systems work, electricity, electromagnetism, and electric circuits. So the activities we did were making a windsock out of a plastic bag and hair dryer. We draw the sun-earth systems with key Inupiaq vocabulary. We do a dance called Danji cycle dance that moves inspired by Tai Chi to mimic reconnection, create Earth's current systems, and forecast auroral activity with KP index. So here you can see how we made the windsock or like Earth's bubble with this plastic bag. I also had the students that, blew different type of like fast, slow, or hot or cold air on them, and they were able to forecast kind of solar wind and space weather. So this really gave them a good understanding of what we look out for in solar wind that could also create activity. We have drawn the sun-earth system with key Inupiaq vocabulary. So, for example, none of them had heard Kikuyat, so they learned that Aurora is called Kikuyat in the northern slope Inupiaq dialect. We learned about Mazak or Nunakpak for sun and earth systems. Here you can see some of their drawings with key Inupiaq vocabulary. And here, some of the things that really catches attention are how they can differentiate between solar wind and coronal mass ejections, as well as how detailed some of these descriptions are for especially the auroral oval. So by the 3rd week, I was noticing that they need some more physical activities. So my advisor back in Michigan, Professor Jim Slavin, always used the Tai Chi analogy for the Danji cycle. So I tried to create a full dance sequence with using Tai Chi moves, and try to teach them about how the reconnections and day side and night side is happening. And this really hurt their shoulders. So their shoulders were getting really tired. So that made a really great analogy for auroral oval. And I think they really, whenever they see auroral oval, they immediately understood this is where activity from our all arms map to. And that was a really nice way of kind of reinforcing that point. And to teach about, electric circuits, Birkeland currents, I use these conductive dough called squishy circuits. These are conductive doughs in different colors. So I asked them to create the first earth made out of this black dough, which is conductive. And we covered it with the atmosphere, which was the white layer. That's an non-conductive one, and on top of that we have put this blue and red, upward and downward field aligned current systems, and we had to separate them a little bit. So troubleshooting them also teach them a little bit about how Earth was really conductive. And you can see we put like these light bulbs, and they could create how this currents are closed in the upper atmosphere. They were able to understand it, and they were able to understand how Aurora really cannot hurt us too much because of that layer between the ground and atmosphere that is really where the energy is dissipated through. We looked at some of the KP indices and tried to forecast how each aurora, each day would look like in terms of auroral activity using our Geophysical Institute auroral forecast web page. And they were really good at understanding what KP index meant for space weather. So on week 4, it was the final week where we actually brought together all these concepts and discussed upper atmosphere and aurora. So started the course with questions like where the aurora occur, what gases are there in the Earth's atmosphere. We talked about types of aurora, colors of aurora, what does it mean? And then we had very different activities. One of them was get to know Earth's ionosphere through jello ionospheres. The other one was launch your particles. The third one was make aurora with different colors. We also had a memory game for diffuse and discrete aurora. And then because they love drawing, I had to throw in like draw different auroras with the cutout shapes. So I got this idea from a trip to Vegas, but basically I made these like jello ionospheres at home, blue, green, and red, and I gave them some markers. So they were able to go and mark which aurora layer ended at which altitude approximately and what created that light. So brought the concepts they learned from the first class into this one. So they could look at different colors and make out what molecule or atom could be giving out that light. And I gave them marbles and asked them to create certain colors of aurora for me. So when I said create a red aurora, they dipped it into the first layer. And when I said create blue aurora, they had to push it further into the jello ionosphere. So this gave them the intuition that, okay, we need more energy, we need to press it harder, they need to be faster for creating these different colors. And they were really grasping that concept well. Then I explained them, reconnection again from the other class, the third class at Earth's magnetosphere happened in 2 different places. And so we had this setup where I drove an X line on the floor and gave them all marshmallows because they can hit each other, and then slingshots. So every time I asked them to stand on the X line and throw a marshmallow into the auroral oval that I drove. And whenever they scored, we drove an X for it inside the auroral oval. At the end, they ate the marshmallows, but until then, it went well. And I also asked them to run around that X line and then throw marshmallows. And then we connected those dots and really got spiral type of auroras, which really inspired them to understand some of the shapes that they see coming from that X line movement. Here, we also play the diffuse or discrete memory game and, interpreted the height, where it's blue, where it's red, where what altitude they would be seeing, which one is higher than each other. And then we finished with this making pastel cardboard, different aurora shapes that kind of stacked on top of each other. So after this class, they knew that aurora had different layers. Ionosphere is like this ionized layer of the atmosphere, and aurora occur in the ionosphere as energetic particles from magnetosphere interact with the aurora. So as a recap, this was my success criteria. One of the students said making aurora is really difficult, end of the last class, which then I feel like, okay, I'm vindicated. This is what I tried to show them. And then here it is, my success criteria is met. They were able to interpret solar and geomagnetic activity from plots. They had really easy time reading them. We have even discussed figures from scientific journals, and they had no problem understanding those concepts. They can differentiate between solar flares and coronal mass ejections, which is even a tricky thing for most citizen scientists as well. And they can identify what aspects of space weather to look out for and the steady processes that they may lead to aurora. And they can also differentiate between diffuse and discrete aurora by the end of the class, and can identify different species in the upper atmosphere based on the aurora color. I think I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to put some of
No. Keep going.
Okay.
You've got as much time as you need. We're very, very casual, and just keep rolling. I'm deeply enjoying this, and I want to come and join the class next time. But anyway, please continue.
Sounds good. I mean, I have 2 more slides only,
Yeah,
but
take your time. Take your time. There's no rush.
okay, so these are the lessons I learned myself. Some of the students were very advanced compared to other peers, and it's not about only age. They would know what light, magnetism, or seasons would be occurring from, which was very interesting. As I said, 3 of the students were female presenting, and I chatted a little bit, and this seems to be a prevalent trend in homeschool, like this enrichment classes, that there are generally more female students or female presenting students in these classes. And I realized their attention span is not ideal for long informative videos, which is what we tend to do for outreach. Most of the times we draw cartoons, but this is really not working, especially maybe in a class setting. Maybe when they're individual, it might work, but if it's a class, they really get bored with anything that was over like a few minutes. In class activities, especially involving physical activity, was seen to really resonate well and help that intuitive understanding. And then again, some of them are coming to Alaska for really limited time span. So there's not much to get familiar with the Inupiaq culture. And at each example for these physical or mathematical concepts, there are so many things to draw off from heliophysics, which was really helpful. But further investigating that and creating more 3D printed, something that you can see, touch, feel would be really helpful for them to understand these concepts better. And some of the other key points that I deduced from homeschooling and supplementary courses in Alaska is that students generally tend to score lower compared to traditional school students. But in Alaska, this is an option that is really a viable solution for most of the problems. And we have to be really targeting that audience, I think, in our SMART, especially SMART 365 classes. And then the way that the indigenous learning and its elements needs to be implemented in an intentional way, I really, at times I was suggested to do more about this, but it's not, it shouldn't trivialize the information, I think, and it has to be really done in a thoughtful way and not benefit from some of this information that is compiled by the communities. And then the last thing is, like, as I said, heliophysics provide a really rich content, and at each step I was able to bring things back into an example that we've already seen in the heliophysics, whether it be on physics or mathematics. So that really provided a nice canvas for me. So yeah, I went a little bit over time, but thank you. This is basically what we have done last year, and it was a really nice experience for me. And I'm hoping to hear any feedback that you might have to make the class better for next semester.
Thank you so much, Doa. That is incredible. I have just been sitting here geeking out. This is a brilliant way of sharing this science. Does anybody have any questions to start us off? I have lots.
I was wondering how the kindergartner did, because these are such abstract concepts, and developmentally, a kindergartner is still a very concrete thinker.
I had K2 was the lowest. I didn't have any kindergartners.
Oh, good. Okay. Even so, the younger ones, how did they do? Did that?
So yeah, the younger one was actually the most advanced in certain physics concepts like light and magnetism. And he, like, that one had a bit of a problem with the attention span, but overall, especially physical activities seem to work the best for the youngest student, especially
Yeah,
like the cycle dance and everything.
I think that's wonderful. I've been teaching kids astronomy, kindergartners right through, K-12. And the younger ones, physical activity really helps drive home concepts. And I mean, you had some great ideas there. Really awesome. I can't wait to try them.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Doa. It's always great to hear from such a highly motivated scientist. What we are doing is fantastic. Yes, I think sometimes we forget, that the science we do is not just a way to advance or improve scientific discoveries, but must be open to everyone and involve as many people as possible, sharing our love for science. I would like to ask you, what led you to love science, and where or when did you find your inspiration?
Well, it's I always hated physics. I was a really bad physics student during high school, I would say, and I think, but I really loved reading about it. But like like learning it in the classroom versus reading about it made such a different impact for me. I think that contradiction led me to delve more into it and how to make it more accessible. I guess that's the problem I was having. So identifying why I cannot find it accessible is the way that concepts, especially in Turkey, it's very, in the name of meritocracy, we are standardizing the tests so much so that it becomes a matter of short-circuiting to the answer. So we would have multiple choice physics questions where you really wouldn't think about the question in a more philosophical aspect, but you would learn about how to eliminate some of the choices because they might be wrong, like by building some memory games or stuff like that. So I think having gone through that standardized testing and in the process really failing physics and then rediscovering it through reading more about it. Yeah, that's what I would think.
That's really cool. What are your future goals, and how do you hope this Smart 365 project will evolve in the future?
So I'm hoping, so the one thing is, compared to other classes, this came out a little bit too, I guess, class-like in the beginning, but there are so many other activities that I can think of. So one thing we did is we bought a 3D printer last semester. So now I want to build my own toys. And, you know, for example, this for the sun's surface, as I say, all the magnetic shavings or the magnets you see are enclosed and you have to shake them. It's not really intuitive. So I want to start making, you know, like something people can touch, interact with, make my own toys for this class, basically, that are 3D printed. So that's one aspect, but we'll see.
Awesome. Thank you.
I would love to see how the 3D printed magnetosphere works with these age groups. This is something that we've wanted to find out, but it's been hard to find sort of the folks who have that audience, but also have a 3D printer. So if you do that, please let us know. I have a link from Jeremy Kazoop, who wanted to be with us today, but is getting ready for the hurricane. So he has something he developed called KP Fox. That is a data visualization of the KP index. And in fact, my internet is having trouble loading it right now, but it is just kpfox.com. I'll put it in the chat. And so he wanted to throw that out there. And I also wanted to throw out, we just released a card game that it's made for kids the age of the audience that you're looking at. And it helps answer the question, how can I see Aurora? So if you want to play with that, I would love that. But I also just had a couple of questions for you too. You had talked about trying to kind of get away from standardized testing. And I, as a neurodivergent learner and someone who's been in informal ed, completely sympathize with that. But a lot of times when I talk to classrooms, they are like, well, we have to justify this to the administration. You know, how are you tying this in with education standards?
So that is something, yeah, it's a kind of, it's easier said than done, right?
That is.
But one thing is, I think this is not a reinforcement of a solution, but I think it's reinforcement that this is going to be a more problematic is, I'm also teaching machine learning, and with the machine learning, you see how the standardized testing is basically a system that's already been beaten.
Mm-hmm.
So if the schools do not have access to books that the standardized test is based on, or that material is not updated regularly, like this is already monopolized so much by the, yeah. So I don't know what would be the good way, but more and more we look into it, there's just problems keep coming up. And, you know, I certainly benefited from standardized testing because education can then be freer or more readily available, at least, even though there are problems with it. So I would say, like even with this class, right, the students were from really different grades, but in the end, like how I think they understood. And I mean, it's because saying the Aurora is difficult, or they are, you know, Aurora makers are tired, and, you know, making sentences like this. So it really falls on the educators who are already stretched in. So I don't know, without a political statement, how far I can go with this, but yeah, I think Nancy wants to.
Yeah, I'd recommend that you work with a faculty member in the education department that develops science curriculums, and they could probably help you with aligning it with the standards, the national standards, and whatever Alaska has. You've got great ideas and some great, you have great stuff there, but they can help make sure that they are in alignment, and then with that you can, you know, present that to teachers and homeschoolers. They'll be able to meet requirements. On the 3D things, I've got a, I do most of my outreach at the University of Washington in Seattle, the astronomy department. And about 10 years ago, one of our graduate students got a grant to develop a lot of 3D models, although she used styrofoam and, you know, pipe cleaners and everything, but she was able to develop a lot of hands-on materials to explaining the sun, magnetisms and whatnot, and also stars. I wish I had, I have some photos of myself when I use them with visually impaired students. We have visually impaired students that come through every other year. And I train students to utilize all of these materials, which is really a lot. I mean, I filled a classroom. Every single desk had activities on them for the kids, and it worked out really well. It's just amazing. I'll try and find them and send them to you.
That would be
Well,
great.
give you a start.
Yes, so two things is we have like an education outreach office at Geophysical Institute, which I worked closely with while developing the course. Kaylee Merlot from our education office was helping me in understanding some of the national standards. But again, yeah, I have so much way to go on that end as well. The other thing is, so when we got the 3D printer, we are submitting some of our previous designs as well as like a open, publicly available 3D printable designs. So our idea is launching this through our website as like downloadable, printable for everyone who wants to make use of these kind of toys that we'll be developing. We have applied this to our deployment system now for magnetometers, where we are building like amateur, semi-professional magnetometers. But yeah, we are hoping to expand it and kind of archive it and put all these like kind of activities there as well, so that could be implemented into curriculums more easily.
I'm going to say that's wonderful. We have access to 3D printers at our university too, but keep in mind it's also good to have 3D models that you can build out of readily available materials in a classroom or a home, or you can go to the local hardware store or whatever, because you know, kids can relate to that.
Toilet paper tubes, the educator's best friend.
Oh gosh. My 2-year-old grandson loves this toilet paper tube that is his telescope. He just runs all over the house looking at things.
Yeah. I used to have 3 massive bins of toilet paper rolls to use at my museum for all these different things. But yeah, no, this is wonderful. And I am sitting here just, you know, so excited. I love the multi-sensory approach that you took. I love the multimodal approach that you took, the exploration learning that you took, and you said that you were shifting less from a didactic form where it was lecture-based to more exploration learning. Love, 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 love all of this. Are you publishing your curriculum, and can I get my hands on it?
I would be happy to. So I think, Laura, you suggested we also publish this in Museum of Education.
I love
Journal.
that. Yes.
Or Journal of Education, Museum Education.
I have
think
it somewhere.
right?
Yeah. I think they would really enjoy this, and yeah, absolutely. And coming from you guys would be so cool, because I don't think, have you guys published in there before? I don't know that
No,
they have
it was
Alaska.
the first time that when you mentioned, I heard about it, and I'm hoping to in November gear towards a publication. It's just
oh my gosh, absolutely. I would be very happy to help facilitate that any way I can. I know some of the people over there, and I'd be happy to introduce you. But yeah, absolutely. I don't actually know how that process works very well. I am working on my first paper myself right now.
Oh,
so
great. I'll have questions for you then. Like
yeah, please. And I guess so my other question was kind of, you've gone over it a little bit. But when I did museum education as a degree program, one of the things that we did was at the end of every program, we would sit down with a list of keeps and changes, and that would inform our future practice. So what would be your top keeps from what you did, and what would be your top changes from what you did? I know it's hard.
Yeah, that's I mean, I kind of ventured into this with not much proper education, so I am now, you know, like the more and more that I started talking to students and their parents, I realized that one thing would be, again, like to like implement more activities, especially more physical activities, like and I think in the beginning I thought they would be, if it's a cartoon they might like it. I think that's where I failed. So I would not, you know, invest too much, especially in a classroom setting, invest too much in videos in the future, but use more, again, things that they can build. And maybe one thing that, especially the squishy circuits, was so versatile. Like they were even able to, when they were troubleshooting it, they were discovering things on their own. So I think that would be something else that I should allocate more time to, like give them the circuits, provide them the model, but let them troubleshoot it, because it was really nice to see that they were realizing the currents if they there's no atmosphere, they were it was short circuiting. So I should allocate some time for them to make mistakes and then figure it out by themselves. So they learned a lot of things during that like 15-minute activity.
I love that. I had worked with snap circuits before, but I had never seen squishy circuits. Those must be newer, and they are so cool. And I like feel like I need a set now. But yeah, no, this is incredible. I had one more question, but it has slipped my mind. It will come back to me in a second. Does anybody else have any other questions? I know, Hugo, you've done stuff with students, putting you on the spot here. Do you have any questions?
Well, no, I don't have any questions, but I think it's a great. Well, you don't even see me. I think it's a great way to teach kids. We just started here, so maybe I'll try to do something. Maybe in November, I'll talk to the teachers and see what their program is, and go from there. I'll let you know.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I would love to hear
Mhm.
about that.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like how can they paint? It's hard to paint auroras or like draw them and whatever. So, but I've been thinking about it. So,
I have been using so there's an artist who paints things similar to Aurora. Sometimes she paints auroras using magic markers, water-based markers, and then you can go over them with a wet brush and get something like this.
Ooh, those are nice.
Yeah. So I actually talked to Museum of the North about that and shared her stuff with them at one point. They wrote a lesson plan about that. But that's one way to do it. I remembered my question, and it is a question. This is something that I've really been struggling with teachers so overburdened right now, and with parents just, trying to get by during the pandemic and dealing with all of the things that they're dealing with right now. What is your strategy for future engagement? We have been really struggling to find for our educational materials, teachers who have the time and the bandwidth to do this. And I know you had 4 students, and that's wonderful. Are you looking to expand that? And what are your strategies for kind of engaging those communities?
So I'm in the long term, what we are doing here is we have a UAF installment of the Space Weather Underground program that was first initiated by Chuck Smith at New Hampshire. So as a part of it, what we do is this 2-week course in summer. So this is the 3rd year I have taught it. We bring educators across Alaska, and we try to make it as rewarding as possible. So we give a scholarship to go with it by talking to our Space Grant Consortium. So they give about $2,500 of scholarship. We try to cover their lodging, expenses. So this also helps them. A lot of teachers pay out of pocket for some of the school expenses. So it's kind of like you can use this scholarship as you wish. So, and then we pay for the 3-credit course as well, which they can use for recertification. So we try to make it as rewarding as possible for educators. And when they come, we try to provide these as, like they would have a magnetometer, for example. We are now currently building magnetometers, but next year, and as a part of that class too, we are hoping to create more, instead of, soldering the magnetometer, we will provide them is like built magnetometer, so that we can explore these other things. Okay, this is how we told Aurora, like with this jello ionospheres, or this is how we created magnetic fields. So provide it as like easily, like pill-sized, curriculum pieces, so they can easily implement it with all the tools that are needed, and they can take it back to their schools with like the and going to the material themselves, it would save them from, spending their individual times to learn about these on their free time. So they would be learning them as a part of the class, which will be used to for their accreditation too. So I hope this would be a better way to help team tag this with teachers. So I don't know if I can expand it too much, because it's a fee involved, and I don't think I got paid from this. I'm not sure. Maybe I am. I didn't realize if I did. So, but it will be more sustainable, I guess, if we are collaborating with teachers.
Yeah. Liz is gonna smack me for helium handing, but if you want to collaborate with us, like, holler, please, because this is amazing and I'm so excited about it. Thank you so much. This has been absolutely amazing. I am so excited about all of this.